welcome everyone, and welcome to Inchin Closer's event on understanding how Hindi or Indian languages can help you to learn Mandarin or connect with Southeast Asian languages. Stuart Jay Raj is an author, public speaker, and multinational business management strategist. He holds a degree in cognitive and applied linguistics from Griffith University in Australia and has fluency ranging from competent to native in over 15 languages, including Mandarin, Cantonese, Thai, Indonesian, Spanish, Sanskrit, Danish, and other languages predominantly spoken across Southeast Asia. He has developed industry-specific knowledge and skills with military government, non-government agencies, as well as multinational corporations spanning across several domains. In particular, aerospace, cybersecurity, human trafficking, modern trade, and energy, where he works on the ground across Asia, assisting parties from both West and East with mutual interests to overcome differences and negotiate internally and externally for success. Stuart is the author of the best-selling book, Cracking Thai Fundamentals, Installing a Thai Operating System for Your Mind, and has presented TEDx talks across the region in English and Mandarin, and has trained simultaneous interpreters across the region and was for several years on the international Miss Universe interpreting team. So welcome, Stuart.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Nazia. So I'm the right way up now, right?
Yes, I thought you were going to do some sign language and teach us a new language, maybe.
I can do that
upside down.
Okay. No, so thank you very much for this opportunity, Nazi. It's amazing. When I saw that there was a group of Chinese-speaking Indians that were in this community, I thought, that's fantastic. It's so rare to find. In places like Malaysia, you find a lot of Indian heritage people speaking Chinese because you need it on the ground there. But it's not so often I'll meet people from India that speak Chinese. So it's fantastic. My background, so I'm half Indian. My father's Fijian-Indian. So they speak Hindi at home. And my mother's Australian. My mother's father spoke, so that's on the white side. He spoke about 11 languages. And wow. So he spoke fluent Chinese, Japanese, Hebrew, Russian, German, French, Italian. He was a radio operator during the Second World War. And so when I was a kid, he taught me everything from Morse code to building radios and transmitters. We'd listen to shortwave radios and listen to foreign broadcasts and also languages. And he taught me how sound works, how language works. And so we used to speak Italian, Japanese, Chinese then. But then also I had a surrogate family growing up from childhood. So I grew up more Chinese Indonesian. So I from childhood, spoke Indonesian and Chinese, and then different languages like Spanish, Italian, Danish. Like you said, home, our base language is Thai. So Thai, Indonesian, Malay. But once you start to get more and more languages, just like I guess if you speak one, say, Northern Indian language, it's easier to start to pick up more and more other Northern Indian. Or if you speak, say, one Southern Indian language, say a Dravidian language, like say Tamil or Telugu, you can start to learn Kannada and different ones out like that. You see the links. And the more languages you have, even in this part of the world, they link. And then they start to link to Europe. And then I'm getting into Russian and Slavic languages this past year. And that's like the missing link between the languages of India and the languages of Western Europe. So yeah, I'm lucky to have a lot of exposure growing up. And now over the past 20, 25 years, I use the languages actually on the ground in business.
Right. So a lot of people say that it's really hard to learn Mandarin.
Yep.
And what we've been trying to do at Inchin Closer is to predominantly teach the Mandarin phonetics. So you have the pinyin, and we've been trying to match that with Hindi phonetics so that it becomes easier for Indians to learn the language because they're learning it from a language that is already familiar to them.
Right.
And secondly, it doesn't seem as daunting. It's not as scary because most people in India think that learning Mandarin is a very difficult language.
Right.
But if they learn it from something that they're already very familiar with, it becomes a lot easier. And this doesn't have to be Hindi. I'm just saying Hindi because it's the national language and everybody knows this. So, you know, let's talk about the similarities between why does this work? Because for me, when I was learning Mandarin in Shanghai, it's something that came very naturally to me. When I would hear Mandarin, I would automatically write it in Hindi to get the pronunciation. It was not something that I had to learn, that somebody told me to do, or I was given like any kind of hint, because I wasn't learning with any other Indians.
Right.
And my Chinese teacher had no clue about this. But it's something that came very automatically to me.
But I'm going to show you linguistically. My background's linguistics, and this is what I use and tools that I've used to show you actually linguistically why these are linked. This is my Indic consonant compass that I built several years ago. This is the amazing, and I can actually show you. I've even got Brahmi in here. So you can see 3000 BC, as proud Indians, you would know that we have the Brahmi script here. Ka kha ga gha nga, cha cha ja ja nya, ta tha da dha da, ta tha da dha na, ba bha ba ba ma, right? This is, so we have the 5 vargas. This is the back of the throat, the palate. So from the back up to the palate, to the roof of the mouth. So let me swap this to Devanagari. So you're used to the right. And then we have dental, and labial, This is a map of the human mouth. And we've got stopped throat, aspirated, so ga, ka. Then voiced, we call that ghosa, so ga, ga, ga. And then nasal, nga. This is not just for Indian languages. This is actually a map of how the human body produces language. And it's a map of all languages. It's a map of how we produce any language. And there's a few little tweaks. So for example, if I showed you there are many scripts that use this. So Thai is one script you can see, and I've color coded these because the voicings have lost, but basically we use the same grid. You can look at Tibetan. They use the same grid. Now I'm going to keep the Tibetan there because it's got an interesting tie-in later on with Asia. Now let me show you this though. So can you see my sheet here?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have ka, ka, ga, ga, nga. These ones here, all right? So this is our 5x5 base grid. Ja, cha, ja, cha, nya. Ta, ta, da, da, na. Ta, ta, da, da, na, pa, 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 ma. For anybody that has learned Mandarin, I'm sure you all remember your pinyin lessons in the very beginning. Have a look at this. All it is ka, 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 flipped on its head. So if we start with this row first, then here to the dental, then cerebral. Now in Hindi and in Devanagari, we have you can see the tip of the tongue is on the mouth, right? So but actually linguistically for these ones in Mandarin, rather than zi, 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 where it's closer to dental on that hard palate, you actually have this palatized roof of the mouth. So rather than it's zhi, zhi. So it's almost like the d, except you flatten your tongue on the roof of the mouth. Zhi,
Yeah.
zhi, but it's from that same position. So it's actually going according to the same map of the mouth. Zhi, 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 zhi. They're affricates. And then we move to the palate. So in Hindi, where we'd have cha 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 nya, this is ti ti shi. So this is almost like the sibilant sha, this one here, except it's moved forward a little bit in Chinese. And then the back of the throat, ka, ka, and then ha is this bass voice, which is the equivalent to ha in Devanagari. So basically, we have all of our pinyin. Bu, pu, mu, fu, de, te, ne, le, zhi, chi, shi, ji, qi, xi, zi, ci, si, ji, qi, xi, ge, ke, he, bang. We have Chinese mapped into this map of the mouth that our wonderful Indian linguists made 3000 BC.
Wow.
So not saying that it's directly related to Hindi or directly related to Sanskrit, but these linguists actually built a map of the human mouth. And so if you understand, so as long as you understand the format of Hindi alphabet, you actually understand how the mouth shifts. Now, get this. This is where it gets cool. It works for any language. So let's go back to go, 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 ngo. If I say chicken in Mandarin, ji, ji, it's this one here, ch, right? If I say chicken in Cantonese, gai, so you've just moved one block up. And this is how languages change. In English, if I say church, church, ch. But if I say it in German, Kirche, it's this one. And in Danish, it's Kirche. So it's the same movement of human mouth, whether it's Chinese and we have Ji Mandarin, Gai Cantonese, Gai in Thai. This is a universal map of human sounds. And this is why I think if you're a Hindi or Indic language speaker, you have a huge advantage learning not only Chinese, but any language, because you have a map of how language is structured and how it shifts within the human mouth and over time and over geography. So yeah, there you go. You've got, this is my version of the Mandarin sounds mapped to the Indic system. Now, I don't know how, I just make a comment too. One thing that's an issue is with any language. In Thai, we use this word phalang. Now, a native English speaker from America is told to write it F-A-R-A-N-G. So even if they learnt the word as phalang, when they go back home and they look at it the next day, they're going to read it as farang.
Right.
I say can't, you say can't. I say phalang, you say farang. So we have to be very careful that our mother tongue's versions of letters don't influence the way the target language uses those letters. So so I just wanted to mention that because because in Chinese we use this B for bu, pu, mu, fu. Understand that B is not actually B in Hindi. B is actually P in Hindi.
This is exactly what we try to teach our students. This becomes really important because when Indians say B, it's a very silent B.
Right.
It's not as pronounced.
Right. Well, it's because the fact is that a B in Mandarin, in Hanyu pinyin, is actually in IPA, so International Phonetic Alphabet, which linguists will use to map any sound. It's actually the P symbol. And P is actually PH. It's P
Pho.
with an aspiration. This letter in Hindi, there are many different variations, and especially if you put a dot, it becomes a F. But
Correct.
in linguistics and traditionally in Sanskrit, it is not F, it's P.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what this one is here. So don't be thrown by the actual symbols. And the same goes for D. D is not a D. This
Right.
D is not this letter here. It's actually this letter here. So this is tao, it's coming from the teeth. It's not coming from the roof of the mouth.
Right.
And the same with this one here. So that's one
Same
thing to
with
make
T
sure.
as well.
Well, T is actually so that's actually this one here, TH.
Right.
It's not th. And again, TH from Sanskrit, not from modern Hindi.
Mm-hmm.
Because those sounds have actually changed in modern Hindi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's just one thing to make sure. Do not use the sounds that you're used to seeing these Roman letters for as the pinyin equivalents. Understand that they actually map differently. So it pays to spend a little bit of time in the beginning to remap your, rewire your brain so that you're actually, you probably see me now. So rewire your brain and your mouth so that those links don't get interfered by your mother tongue's rendition of those letters.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting because we've noticed that a lot. It's not only Hindi like you showed us, but a lot of the Dravidian languages as well are very similar to can get you the exact phonetics, especially for Mandarin. So Hindi is more North Indian, but it also works for the South Indian languages.
The South Indian languages,
more specifically,
their sound palette is wonderful, and you can actually get very detailed, very accurate with the different sounds that are present there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's it. And again, this is what my grandfather used to play with me with. We learned about sounds. We learned how the body maps to sounds, and we would play with sounds. For example, and when learning a language is learning how to get out of your mother tongue's version of sound and play with different ones. So for example, the letter D, like we just said, can you say do it?
Dual?
Do it, like
do it.
Oh yeah, so you say that. Just say that in English to me.
Do it.
Okay, say it again.
Do it.
Okay, so your D, do it, is pronounced just a little bit back on your palate. Do
All
it.
Right.
It's different to the way I say it. I say do it. You can also almost hear this. Now in Thai, the D is do, because that D in Thai used to actually be an N with the throat closed. It was like an N saying, you say the word no with a cold, no. That's the D in Thai. And in Vietnamese is even more so. They breathe in when they do it. So it's no. It implodes. So when I was a kid, we would play with sounds like that and say, okay, now we're going to shift to this set of sounds. And you might hear New Yorkers say, do it. And they pronounce it right from the front of the teeth. So the more you can play with sounds and get control, your mouth can take control over sounds, the easier it's going to be then to learn the sound palette of something like Mandarin.
Yeah. So does it help to constantly listen to the foreign language to be able to replicate the sound palette? Because what we also tell a lot of our students is to be able to listen to a lot of Mandarin, to kind of immerse yourself in the language, to be able to get the correct pronunciation of the language. So
not only does it help, it's the only way.
All right.
You cannot learn a language just by reading it in a book and hear it in your head and thinking you're going to do it. It must be around you. And again, from my Cracking Thai Fundamentals program, my Minecraft program, it's all about building an environment around you where you have the language with you 24/7. Even if you're working and you're doing other stuff, it doesn't need to detract from your work. You can still build an environment where the language is breathing around you. And there are different levels of listening. So one, just have things playing in the background so you get used to the sounds. You don't have to understand everything. But then there are other times where, yeah, you'll go in spaced repetition and you'll have sentences that are pitched maybe just a little bit above where your level is. So you're constantly learning. But that's tiring. So you can only do that for certain periods. The way your brain works, have you heard of the term circadian rhythms? So your circadian rhythm is from sleep through to the day when you're awake, and then to sleep. So that's one circadian, circa around diem, the day, so over the day. But you also have these ones called ultradian rhythms. So ultradian, ultra, many, diem, throughout the day. So one ultradian cycle lasts around 90 minutes. And your brain goes in these ultradian cycles. And so there's no way you're going to be focused for 90 minutes straight. It's going to take a bit of a runway up to it. You're probably going to have 20 good minutes of focus, and then you're going to go out of it again. So you need to go with those flows. And but when you're in the zone, yeah, you learn. But out of it, just have things in the background. Don't worry if you're not understanding. Put it to the side or just have it there and understand that your brain's going to piece it together over time. But it's your job to build the environment around you that at least is going to feed your brain and feed your body and the muscles in your mouth with what it needs to be nourished and learn the language.
Right. That's really interesting. So talking about using technology, and especially because most of India is in lockdown right now, a lot of our students have been grappling with trying to figure out how to learn new vocabulary and how to retain that vocabulary, the Mandarin vocabulary, to be able to use it. The Inchin app that we have developed is one such way where they can learn through interactive stories. But for somebody who has learned so many languages as well, what do you suggest in trying to be able to retain the language, especially when it's, COVID, it's difficult to travel for many people. They're not able to immerse themselves in China. It's difficult to really be in that zone or situation.
Okay. My honest, and I'm somebody who loves tech.
Yeah.
I adore tech. This is my way that I learn the best. We are human beings. We are tactile beings. We have senses, and we have to get the words into us. And so I go through. So if I'm learning Russian use in that thing, I will build the app out myself. I'll cut and paste it, bring it out, and then I can show you a sample of what I did just yesterday. I use Vim. So here's the Russian article. I built this out. Then I don't know if you knew you could do this or not, but say I come into here, and so let me grab the headline. Bang. I'll come into here and let me paste that in there. I don't know if you knew that you could do this with Google Sheets. Google Translate, bang. And then I'm going to translate that from Russian into English. It prints this out. Then when I copy and paste this and I put it into any HTML document, I've just built myself a multilingual text, and I can format that. So I can say,
right. So it helps you read in any language.
Not only that, so if you come to this article now that I wrote, basically this is the way I formatted it. I build bilingual text. I can read sentence to sentence using that same method. I've got my Ruby text here, so I can read my English over that, get my vocab from there, and using Vim, I've also built down a glossary here. So I go through Facebook.
So this is a great way to actually learn the language then, but it's basically that you need to write it down.
And that is the thing, because just sitting and doing an app by itself is not going to teach you. You need to get the language in you. You need to like make it part of your activity. And so every little bit that I'm doing there as I'm sitting and I'm dissecting the language, that language is being part of me. It's not just passive. And then
Exactly. It needs
because
to be immersive.
yeah, and because I've actually sat and built this, I'm going to go through and be reading it. And I can build the tools any way I want. And so what we're doing is we're training people to actually have a base level of basic tech skills. It's not tough stuff. It's a general
Right.
knowledge. But then you can actually build the text that anything that you want. You've got all the tools that you need to learn vocab at your fingertips. Go through Facebook.
It's really interesting because you can build your own vocabulary that you want to learn as well, right?
I refuse
and then you
to
can
learn
read
from
any text that
vocabulary.
you want.
That's right. I'll refuse to learn from vocabulary that people tell me to read. I will want to build from my own texts, my own sources. I'll go into Facebook, look at people's posts. I'll get the language from there. I'll go into text groups on Telegram and grab them from there. And
But what about listening to the language?
Okay, so listening to the language, you can do different things.
And being able to speak it, because most Indians want to learn how to be able to listen and speak. Reading, writing, especially with Mandarin text, takes a while. And so listening and speaking is important.
Well, listening and speaking with that thing, with text to speech, all of them, and they're very native sounding. So you can actually have these things that you build actually speak to you as well. Anki decks will do it, and they'll speak directly to you. Listening to the news and news articles. There are some sites out there, I think BBC even has them, but you will basically get a Voice of America, but you can actually get the verbal spoken version of the written articles.
And what's interesting is that Netflix also allows you different subtitles, right?
Yeah, you look through Netflix. Going even a step further, if you go to many databases, there are SRT files. So you can actually download the SRT, which is the subtitle files from movies in English or Hindi and then Chinese, and just drop those into a spreadsheet, and you actually have translation.
You have the dialogue.
Cell to cell from English or Hindi to Chinese of the full dialogue.
Yeah.
And if you can't read the Chinese, it doesn't matter, because you just have to cut and paste that. And there are things that will take 2 seconds to change it all to pinyin for you. And then pronounce them for you. So I think where I'm coming from, where do you learn? From everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. If you are not in the country to be able to learn, doesn't matter. You could get onto even Google Maps, and you can jump in and walk around the streets in Google Maps. I actually do that, and I'll take screenshots of signs and billboards in the countries, and then I'll do an OCR on those signs. And then I put those into a CSV file, and then I can also generate speech from the signs that I've taken pictures of in Google Maps.
It's great that you use so much technology to really get into the language, right? Because it has to be very immersive. It has to be practical. You have to be able to get it from different sources.
I would go even further. If you are not doing it that crazily, so, okay, I use tech because I like tech, but if you're not going it, when my grandfather, they didn't have computers back then, but he would use whatever he could to source real samples of the language he could. He spoke fluent Chinese in the 1940s as a white Australian man.
Wow.
That's not very common.
That's hard.
But
I'm sure it was difficult.
He went out of his way to find resources to do it. When I was learning Danish as a kid, there were no Scandinavians around where I lived. So I would get on the train, I'd travel an hour into the city, go to the Danish consulate and ask to sit and read their newspapers in there. And then I also went to the Yellow Pages and I would look for Danish surnames, and I plotted them on a map and went and door knocked in those areas until after about a day of door knocking, I found myself in the heart of the Danish community, where there was a little cluster of them in Sydney. And then I started going to reading groups with them. And I was doing book clubs with a bunch of Danes.
Wow. So you really need to be passionate about the language to be able to pick it up. You have to be able to immerse yourself, to be able to find something local or find some text or find some information to
Not
find
find.
anything, I guess, that interests you, right?
You need, yeah, and it has to interest you, but you need to build the environment. If you don't,
Right.
if somebody says, what's the minimum amount of time that I have to spend on a language to learn it?
Yeah.
You're not going to learn the language.
Yeah, we get that all the time.
Yeah.
All right. I'm also going to open this up now to the audience.
Hi, Stuart. Good evening. It's great you are here, and we are for the first time listening to a lot of new things, which actually we had never thought about it. So one very important thing I wanted to ask you is that I have been trying to learn through this Mandarin for quite some time now, almost more than 2 years or so. So
Right.
probably because I am a working professional at times, you are mostly involved in those Hindi and English that where you actually have your work spare where you're working in. But I tried doing a lot of things that while working on my comp, I always listen to Mandarin songs.
Yep.
Or probably put up something like listening to Jack Ma and trying to, because obviously these are not the conscious part of the learning. These are just subconsciously hitting you somewhere. So my question is that does this subconscious really work, or is it something that I'm just trying to please myself that I'm in touch of the language? So someone who has done so much in language, do you think this works in the long run? Because you're obviously in India, you do not have such a good Mandarin environment to learn Mandarin. So that's my question.
Okay. So the question is, does just having the language surrounding you and getting into your subconscious, is that enough to really work? It's important to have it there, but you do need to use the language. Now, there are some schools where actually they say you shouldn't actually produce language from the outset until you've started to build these sounds around you. And there's something to be said that from that. I can say, like, for a lot of people who are learning Thai, for example, they get so many bad habits in the first 2 months of learning Thai when they hit the ground in Thailand, that it takes them 10 years to unlearn those bad habits because they didn't know what they were listening for. So, for example, 不知道, 知道. People don't know that it's a sh, and so they'll try and make some equivalent to it, and then their muscles get locked into it and they say it the wrong way. So you could listen a million times over, but if you actually are not understanding and feeling where it's coming from and having this correction, yeah, it's not going to work. So the key is not only to build an environment when it's there, but actually have the skills to be able to hear sounds, reproduce them, self-correct, understand when you're pronouncing it. So if you hear the ch and you're pronouncing it z, oh, that's wrong. My ears tuned into that. It's wrong. It's almost like hearing the wrong note on a piano and you're singing off key. You know you're singing off key. You have to bring it in. But you'll never know you're singing off key unless you actually play it against the piano. So you need to have the actual, I'm saying the piano because my piano is just here. You need to have real people to use the language with. And if you don't, well, we've got so many facilities, and I understand Inchin, you guys have speakers, you can speak the language, you have teachers that will do that. Yeah. And there are people that you can pay in China or native Chinese speakers just to be your language buddies.
With you.
Now, here's a side hint that I use in different languages. Get yourself a minimum of 2 mentors. Don't tell them that you've got those mentors, that the other person's there. And then what you do is you ask this person, how would I say this in this, or something that would impress? And you learn to say that. Then with your other mentor, next time you're speaking with them, just use that language in your general conversation. They think, oh, holy crap, your language is getting so good. They're going to start to pitch their language up then for you. And then you use what they've got then to push back here. And then these people are going to be so impressed and pushing your language level higher and higher. You'll actually live up to what their expectations are set for you. And you get those dopamine hits because people are impressed with the way that you're improving your language. But the only way to do it is with native speakers of the language.
Yep, that's true.
Thanks, Stuart. Makes sense. Yes.
All right, we have another question. It seems that the Indic chart that you had with Devanagari and Mandarin was really interesting. So we have a question about the connection between Sanskrit and Mandarin.
Yes.
So is there a connection between Sanskrit and Mandarin? And if so, what is it?
No. Humans speak the language. That's the connection. However, if you watch this movie, you will see this wonderful movie, The King's Letters. And this is about the Hangul script, the Korean script. And have a look at this photo in particular. So we have from Sanskrit, we have the Pagspa script, which then went through to Tibet. And that is what the Korean script was based on, which also uses it to write Chinese characters. But these are built on the positions in the mouth as well, which is the map of the mouth from Sanskrit. So in a roundabout kind of way, a language that is used to write Chinese characters and has this sound system actually has built their writing system based on this Indic chart. So this is ga from the back of the throat. This is n from the teeth, and the. This is ma, and this is j from the palate, and this is the back, the bass voice. So this is like your om. So in Asia, there are influences there, but actually the Chinese language and Sanskrit are totally different languages, totally different language families.
That's good to know. Otherwise, it would have been really easy to learn Mandarin, right?
Yeah, and I think Mandarin is a subject, verb, object language, yes, just like in English.
Mm-hmm.
Funny enough, Hindi is closer to Japanese and Korean.
It is.
Because you actually, a lot of the time in Hindi, you put the verb towards the end, mm-hmm, and you also have case endings. So usko, so this ko ending and stuff like that, it's actually very similar, more similar to Japanese and Korean than it would be to say Chinese. But as long as you're aware of the links, you can map through to it. Yeah. Oh, there's all these, there's other questions coming up.
Yep. You've got lots of questions. Shabnam had a question. Shabnam, you raise your hand. Can you ask?
Yeah. Hi. I have a question. Everyone has a different way of learning. How important is it to be able to read a script, to be able to speak? Because I moved to Thailand, and within about a month and a half, I could read the script. But of course, I could read stuff and I couldn't understand what on earth I was reading. But I found it easier to learn Thai by doing that. Unfortunately, Mandarin being so complicated, the script, I haven't been able to kind of use that same learning tool. Is there an easier way to learn the script? Because I feel that will help me able to speak better or faster.
Okay, so there are several things there. In Thai, and that's wonderful that you learn to learn this script in Thai, and it's especially easy for speakers of Indic languages because it's the same map. It's actually closer to Bengali, so it's ka, ka, ga, ka, nga, instead of ah. That's one thing. And when you see things, actually about 65% of normal Thai is rooted in Sanskrit through Pali or through Sanskrit, and almost 100% of people's names, or at least last names, are Sanskrit based. So that's going to help a lot. As soon as you know the letter to letter switch, you're going to get that. The other thing that learning the script is going to help you do is access real life specimens of the language, whether it's online, whether it's writing. You're not going to write to somebody on WeChat in pinyin. If you do, they're going to block you from WeChat. No Chinese native speaker is going to write in pinyin. And so if you want to interact in Chinese with Chinese people, you need the script. So that's on that side. For pronunciation, pinyin is a wonderful system that it's perfect. You can get your pronunciation spot on with your pinyin, but the downside is that you're going to be left to use only the resources that people prepare for you in pinyin. So the main thing that a script is going to do is open you up to the real living language and people who use it because they're using that script. So for me, every single language I learn the script as well. There are tricks to learning Chinese. There's a wonderful book called Cracking the Chinese Puzzles by T.K. Ann. And that goes into it. And so you can start to get, in Chinese, we say, 左边, 右边, 每边, 中间. So you look for the bushou either on the left, the right. If it's not there, look in the center and you get a feeling of the meaning. So you'll have like 心字旁, 人字旁, whatever, because normally you'll have a meaning particle and a sound particle that builds it up together. And so you can start to, once you get a good knowledge of a certain amount of characters, you can predict what it's probably going to sound like and what it probably means like. And we have what's called guesstimables. It doesn't take that long to get to that. You only need maybe 800 or so characters to start to be able to feel confident in your guessing power. So I would say with Mandarin, you're lucky to have pinyin to be able to start speaking it and speaking it correctly. Get your pinyin from the start. But as you move on, yeah, you're going to want to learn to read it if you want to interact with real human beings.
Yep, learning characters is always a little challenging, but what I've noticed also is that if you either learn it through a logical way, like Stuart was saying, where you see the radical and the meaning or the sound aspect of it, and you're able to understand the logic of that, or you learn it from an artistic perspective. So there are a lot of artists who also kind of try to draw out the character or draw it in different ways to help you to remember it.
The other thing that I'll do also, like, so I've got these here. If I write, this is the other thing, any language, I will develop a handwriting style that's like the native speaker of the language. Because, for example, many learners of Chinese will also say they learn 我, something like that. I'm writing backwards here. But actually, native speakers will probably write more like that. I don't know if you can see that. So what I'll do is actually spend time, and I'll have this thing here as I'm watching TV, just so the word 家, house, for example. This is we call it, this is the kaishu, the normal script. This is the xingshu. And you can see on this how my finger has come up and stuff like that. When I learn a language, I go to the extent of actually getting the muscle movements, and I'll get native speakers to write it. And I build native muscle movement into my hands. So I'm actually flicking the same ways. So I can actually do both. And I use that as a game, but that game gets the language. And as I'm watching TV, I might do that 1,000 times during a movie.
Yes, hi.
I have a question.
Yeah. So I had a question regarding Chinese tones. So I have been learning Mandarin since a year, but then I did not learn the tones in the beginning. So now I'm facing some issues as in the speaking. So I'm facing issues while speaking that I remember the tones for characters or the words when I'm speaking the words individually, but not while saying the sentence or reading anything. So like what do I need to do to overcome this?
Okay. Tones are my most favorite thing in the world. Tone Sandy. One thing I would say for tonal languages, there is no such word in Chinese or in Thai or in Vietnamese or any tonal language as tone. I will say it again. There is no such word as tone that talks about the things that foreigners talk about and call tones. In Chinese, they're called sheng diao, sheng voice, diao degrees. In Thai, we call them wanayuk, tone, voice, colors, color markers. And basically, tones are throat positions. So understand that tones are actually muscle movements of the throat. And it's that all the tone is the difference of where the throat is at the beginning of a syllable and the end. So for example, if I say the word ka, ka, ka. Now, if I say it as that first ka, ka, ka. Now, if I say it like it's ka, ka, ga, 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 so the ka, ka, ka. What's happened to my voice? Ka, ka, ah. The fact that I breathe over that thing has dropped my voice down. So the tone has actually gone down. What these white people did when they go to Asia, they think, oh, you're speaking with a different pitch. And they start focusing on the pitch rather than what the throat's doing. Tones are not pitch. You could get the pitch correct, but your tone will be wrong. Tones are throat positions. And so, fei, 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 it's my voice is pitched up here, fei, and I'm locking it into the top. Ma, ma, my tone is high, and then I'm just pulling it down. I'm pulling the muscles down, ma. And so if you start thinking of tones as throat positions, getting the actual pitch right is not an issue. Because as you're hearing you speak, it's just the way then that the muscles work. So of course, people are not going to say, 我非常喜欢吃水煮牛肉. No one speaks like that. 我非常喜欢吃水煮牛肉. You'll never be into that because your muscles are there. It's just these muscle positions. And so the tones do change when you get into real speech. And actually, when you speak Shanghainese, everything changes, but this is called tone santi. What I would say is learn the tones, maybe color coding them, like things like Pleco app and thing have color coding for the different tones when you're learning the character, but learn sentences as sentences. 最近怎么样? 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 How have you been lately? 最近怎么样? Just learn that pattern of the sentences. That's how native speakers learn from babies. And then later on, you'll be able to come back to those sentences that you know have those words to start to recall what the tones for those words are. That's how it should be. Not you trying to reproduce every single tone perfectly, because in reality, nobody does it like that.
Right. Okay. Got it. Thank you so much.
Yep. Tones are another tough one. So tones and characters are hard for everyone.
I love tones because I've seen 70 and 80-year-olds get a new lease on language when they realize that they've basically believed a bunch of crap that a bunch of Westerners have told them about Asian languages, and that it's so hard and that this and that and this and that, and they're actually not. And they actually see what they are, and they realize, and actually the tones, I won't go into it now, but they lock into the ka, ka, ga, ga, nga. So basically that first column of one set of tones. You know, in Chinese, we have the ping, shang, qu, ru. So each one of, so ping, shang, qu was basically the ping was the ga, zha column. Shang was the next column. Qu was the next column. Your tone categories are actually throat categories. They're not tones. It's just that the pitch just happened to move with that, and it changed over time. So you get the throat right, the tones are going to follow.
All right. That's really interesting. Thank you so much, Stuart. This was a really interesting conversation. I think a lot of students could bring up many of the issues that they had especially with tones, with characters, with learning the language, immersion. So I'd really like to thank you for being on an Inchin Closer's event about how to learn Mandarin in a more effective way, in a more interesting way, right? And also to learn through your experiences.
Yeah, and can I just say that too? Like, Mandarin is the most amazing thing that you're ever going to learn, and you're going to learn it for the rest of your life. In business, it's amazing. You'll never regret it, but you have to learn it. You have to get the bug. If you don't get the bug to learn it, it's not going to happen. Let's do something fun here. Can you just tell a story in English about your time learning Chinese, about your experience in China? You might even want to take your earphone out as you do it, because I don't want my voice to interrupt you. And just speak until I go like that, and you can stop.
Do you want me to take my earphones off?
Well, because I think my voice is going to distract you. So just tell a story with the earphones out, and speak normal pace. Don't speak slowly, and speak loudly.
All right. So I started learning Mandarin.
Jadi hari ini saya mulai belajar
2006,
bahasa Mandarin
and I learned it until
2006, dan saya
2009.
belajar sampai 2009
When I was
dan
in
sampai waktu itu
Shanghai,
saya di Shanghai.
I
Dan
studied Mandarin
waktu
at
itu,
Fudan University,
berian bahasa
and
di
I
มหาวิทยาลัย
was
อุดร
the
แล้ว
only
ผม
Indian
เป็น
student
คนเดียว
in my
ที่มาจาก
class
ประเทศอินเดีย
at the time.
ในคลาสนั้นตอนช่วงนั้นเลย Keep speaking, don't listen to me, take it out, just speak. Tell a story.
I really enjoyed learning Mandarin
เราก็มีความสุข
because
มากๆ
it
เลย
gives
ที่เรียน
me
ภาษา Mandarin
a
因
common
为我觉
language
得
to
是我
speak
们
with
是
a
我们
lot
的
of my
不同
European
语言，我
friends
们所以
and
跟
get
我
to
们
know
朋友
their
我
culture
们会
as
聊
well.
天，然后我们
But
学
more
到了他们的文
importantly,
化跟其他
Mandarin
的，可是
helped
最重要
me
的就是
to get
普通
beneath
话
the
就
skin
帮我
of
可以
Chinese
更了
people
解中
and
国人。
understand their culture and the way they
Y
were thinking a
puedo
lot better.
entender la cultura y cómo se piensan las chineses. Okay.
Amazing.
So anyway, I think that's more fun, just
you
to
were
do like simultaneous
translating.
interpreting. But that's actually a skill,
That's
and it's a key skill to learn any language, to be able to get thought fluency as you're hearing, and decouple your mouth from your brain and still be able to see the meanings and have it produced through language. The human mind and language is an amazing thing. This is why we've done Minecraft.me. There are so many things you can do and get your brain into gear to learn language. And most people only know, they're using a system from the 1800s for their education, where actually our understanding of how we learn has changed so much. So I'll come back to, actually, I think it was Disha that said that different people learn different ways. Do you know how you learn? You might think you learned that way because that's the way that you learned at university, and your mother said, no, you have to get back and read your books and do it like this, and you only got it through. Or your way of learning was getting good grades writing an essay, but is that really learning, or is it just spewing out some information that we were supposed to? So maybe you don't know the way that you learn the best. So be open to learning in new ways as well, and your brain can be the key to that.
That's true. So thank you very much. And for everyone who's interested in knowing a little bit more about Stuart and understanding the connections between all the multiple languages that we have in Southeast Asia, as well as the connection with Sanskrit, please join his Minecraft event. He's running a workshop for 11 weeks.
Start this Sunday.
It starts this Sunday, and it's called Minecraft. I will be sending everybody the link in an email so that you can log in and see what it's about as well.
Yeah, you can jump in here, Minecraft.me. That's awesome. And thank you so much. I hope we can do this again. And I'd love to, even do some really cool masterclasses with Chinese on different things that maybe you wouldn't get in your normal things. Things like writing, xingshu, writing in Mandarin. And you don't have to, you can even be a beginner, never written a Chinese character, and start to learn actually how balanced these strokes are. There are only 8 strokes. And you might find a new hobby. I use it as therapy.
Yeah, we have a lot of students who use characters as sign language amongst themselves as well, between like siblings or husband and wife. It's great.
It's a secret code.
Awesome, everyone. I think we've run out of time. It's been about 15 minutes extra. So thank you all very much for sticking on and being interactive and asking questions. It was great. Thanks so much, Stuart.
下次见。